My name is Emily Russo. I'm 41 years old, and in less than an hour, I'll be testifying in the largest racketeering case in the state of Texas. The courtroom is 5 stories above me, but I can feel the weight of it already, pressing down through the concrete and steel like a warning. 22 years ago, my family told everyone I dropped out of college. Rumors spread fast in our town, especially when they came straight from the Russo family. Drugs, a breakdown, some vague rehab story whispered behind hands and over Sunday brunch. I let them believe it. I needed them to. If they'd known what I was really doing, I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be alive. Right now, I'm in a federal parking garage, adjusting a bulletproof vest beneath a navy blazer and brushing lint from my pants. I look like every other government agent headed upstairs. There's nothing remarkable about me unless you know what I'm about to do. I haven't seen my mother's face in more than 2 decades. I remember the last time clearly, though. She handed my cousin Danny an envelope full of tuition money while telling me I looked tired and maybe college just wasn't my thing. They all thought that I wasn't cut out for success, that I'd fold under pressure. They saw me as soft, quiet, the kind of girl who cried during documentaries and asked too many questions at dinner. Turns out those were the exact reasons I got recruited. The air smells like gasoline and dust. My heels echo against the concrete as I walk toward the courthouse entrance, and I think about all the people who will be watching today. News cameras, federal agents, lawyers, maybe even some of the workers who survived what my family did to them. They'll see me, not as the dropout, not as the ghost of a daughter who vanished, but as Deputy Russo of the U.S. Marshal Service, the lead witness in a case that could send half my blood relatives to federal prison for the rest of their lives. The irony isn't lost on me. The girl who couldn't make it through community college is now the key to dismantling a criminal empire. I take the stairs slowly. My hands don't shake, not anymore. I've been waiting for this day since I first found the photos of injured laborers buried in the basement of my uncle's office. They thought I had disappeared. They were wrong. I was watching the whole time. The Russo name meant something in our part of Texas. To most people, it meant success, hard work, and family legacy. Russo Construction had been around for 3 generations and had built everything from shopping malls to luxury high-rises along the Gulf. What the public didn't see were the graves left behind. Immigrant workers are buried in unmarked plots or sent back across the border in silence. Men who died because safety equipment was too expensive or because asking for fair wages was considered a threat. My Uncle Dominic ran the company like a king in exile. He wore expensive suits, donated to local charities, and sat on the board of a Catholic school he never attended. Behind closed doors, he laundered millions through subcontractors tied to the Sinaloa cartel. The deals were clean on paper. Shell companies, offshore accounts, cash hidden in concrete pallets, and equipment orders. By the time money hit the books, it was legal, shiny, and untraceable unless you knew where to look. My cousins helped keep things moving. Danny handled payroll. Vince oversaw job sites. They weren't brilliant, but they were obedient. They followed orders, looked the other way when workers got hurt, and kept their mouths shut when someone disappeared after filing a complaint. My mother was in charge of HR. She managed benefits for workers who didn't legally exist and filed paperwork no one would ever read. She smiled at church every Sunday and told herself the people working for us were lucky to have jobs at all. It was a well-oiled machine built on fear and silence. New workers came in through unofficial channels. They were told to keep their heads down and not ask questions. If someone made noise, they vanished, or worse, got blamed for their own injuries. No one outside the family ever got close enough to see the rot. The Russo name shielded everything. Local cops looked the other way. Politicians took campaign checks and thanked us for our support. No one suspected the empire was built on exploitation, but I did. From the time I was old enough to help with filing, I noticed numbers that didn't add up, injury reports that vanished, extra invoices that didn't match the work done. and faces I'd seen at breakfast that never showed up again after an incident at a job site. I asked questions once. I got a warning, softly delivered, wrapped in a smile. After that, I stayed quiet, but I never stopped watching. That was the family I was born into. Rich, respected, and rotten to the core. I was 19, working nights at a gas station and mornings at a diner, barely sleeping, barely breathing, but still pulling a 3.7 GPA at community college. I came home one night to Sunday dinner, hoping maybe someone would ask how finals were going or if I'd eaten. Instead, I walked into a conversation that had clearly started without me and was somehow about me. "She's just not built for this kind of life," Uncle Dom said, cutting into his steak like he was slicing through my future. "Too soft. Always has been." My mom didn't argue. She just passed the salad bowl and nodded like it was a fact she couldn't deny. Across the table, my cousin Sam was cracking open his second beer of the evening, already bragging about some new consulting gig our uncle had lined up for him. He had flunked out of 2 universities by then, never held a job longer than 3 months, but somehow he was always the golden boy. "Sam's got leadership instincts," Uncle Dom said. "That's what this family needs, not someone who cries every time a dog commercial comes on." Oh. I sat there, my textbook still in my backpack, grease from the diner still on my sleeves, trying not to show how much it hurt. I'd been working 2 jobs to stay in school, covering tuition myself after financial aid fell short. No one offered help. No one said they were proud of me. They kept talking like I wasn't there. My mother finally glanced in my direction and said, "Maybe it's time to think about other options, Emily. Something more realistic." I remember my throat tightening, as if I spoke, I'd either cry or scream. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and cleared the plates, listening to Sam laugh like he'd already won something I wasn't even allowed to compete for. That night, I learned exactly where I stood in my family. Not as a daughter, not as a student, just a burden they were waiting to give up on. It started with a spreadsheet. I was helping Aunt Gina sort through some invoices in the home office, something I'd done every summer since I was 16. Only this time, I noticed something off. A subcontractor billed for safety equipment that never arrived. Payments made to vendors with no listed address. Names I didn't recognize were tied to huge checks. I brought it up, casually at first, asked if maybe the files got mixed up. Aunt Gina froze for a second, then smiled a little too tightly. "Some things don't need to be double-checked, sweetheart, just file it." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes weren't. That night at dinner, my uncle pulled me aside. We stood in the hallway, between the kitchen and the den, where the rest of the family laughed over a football game. "You like that scholarship we helped with, right?" he asked, adjusting his cufflinks, because it could disappear just as easily. I stared at him, not sure I heard it right. Then he leaned in, calm as ever. "Family businesses require family loyalty. You understand that, don't you?" I nodded, but something cracked inside me. Not just from the threat, but from the realization that this wasn't sloppy bookkeeping. This was intentional, organized, criminal. That was the night I stopped being their daughter, their niece, their quiet little burden. I saw the truth in full color. The construction company was a front. My education was leveraged. And I was just another pawn they thought they could control. I didn't fight back. Not then. I smiled, said thank you, and excused myself like nothing had happened, but I never looked at them the same again. That was the last summer I worked for the family. By the time fall classes started, I was already planning how to disappear. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. One day I was there, the next I wasn't. And by the time anyone realized I was gone, I was already 2 states away with a new name and a new life waiting for me. The story they told themselves was easy to believe. Emily Russo cracked under pressure. She flunked out, got hooked on something, checked into rehab, and drifted off the map. I let them think that because it kept them from looking too hard. The truth was far more deliberate. I'd applied to every federal program I could find. DEA, FBI, Marshals. I sent in forms at public libraries and truck stop internet cafes, afraid they'd trace it if I used my own Wi-Fi. When the Marshals called me back, I knew that was the one. They didn't care about my GPA. They cared that I was sharp, invisible, and had access. I passed the interviews, the psych tests, and the background screenings with enough finesse to avoid red flags. No one asked why I had no references. They assumed my family didn't support me. They were right, just not for the reasons they thought. Training in Glencoe was the hardest thing I've ever done. 6 months of firearms, tactics, interrogation drills, and courtroom protocol. I learned how to disarm a man twice my size and how to shoot center mass in under 3 seconds. My body hurt constantly. My mind is even more. I watched people break. I watched people quit. I wanted to quit too, more than once. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered that hallway. That smile. That threat wrapped in silk. I remembered the names on the fake paychecks, the faces that never came back. They all thought I was in rehab, that I'd become some sad cautionary tale. My mother told people I was getting help. Uncle Dom shook his head in public and said, "Some kids just aren't built for pressure." I played my part. I stayed gone. No phone, no letters, not even a Christmas card. It was the only way to keep the investigation clean. I'd already started gathering evidence before I vanished. Little things. Account numbers, photos, voicemails I'd forwarded to burner phones. By the time the Marshals officially assigned me to undercover work, I'd been preparing for years. What I didn't expect was how lonely it would feel. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from missing people, more like the absence of being missed at all. They moved on without me. No one came looking. No one filed a report. It should have hurt more. But it didn't. It just confirmed everything I already knew. I wasn't family. I was a shadow. Disposable. But shadows see everything. And I saw enough to know what needed to be done. I traded a last name for a badge, traded comfort for purpose. I gave up birthdays, weddings, the quiet safety of being ordinary. In return, I got clarity. I got a mission. I became exactly the kind of person they said I never could be. And for the next 2 decades, I made it my job to protect the people they tried to erase. The first time I walked back into my family's house after 12 years, I felt like I was stepping onto a live wire. My pulse was steady, but my hands stayed close to my sides, where no one could see them tremble. The audio transmitter strapped under my blouse felt heavier than the Kevlar I used to wear on raids. They welcomed me like a prodigal daughter. My mother cried, clutching me like she hadn't ghosted me for over a decade. My uncle grinned like I'd finally seen the light, told me I looked healthier, and poured me a glass of red wine I pretended to sip. I'd rehearsed every word, every pause. The story was clean. I'd hit rock bottom, spent time in a private rehab center, gotten sober, and wanted to make amends. I said all the right things. They ate it up. No one questioned why I was suddenly interested in helping with accounting again. Dinner that night was a parade of veiled threats, disguised as business talk. Sam bragged about a new project on the West Side, something fast-tracked with undocumented labor. My uncle spoke in code, but the meaning was clear. They were expanding again. More buildings, more workers, more money to clean. I nodded when I was supposed to, laughed at half-hearted jokes, asked small questions. Meanwhile, the mic taped beneath my bra picked up every word, every name, every deal. I watched their faces, looking for even a flicker of suspicion. There was none. They didn't see me as a threat. They saw a girl who had failed at life and had come crawling home. That was my cover. That was the trap. I just had to make sure I didn't flinch when the truth got too close. It was supposed to be a quick look. Just 10 minutes alone in Uncle Dom's study while he was out back grilling steaks, and Sam was showing off his new watch to anyone who'd listen. I knew where he kept the petty cash and the spare ledgers, but I hadn't expected to find the slips. They were tucked inside a manila folder labeled Operations, West Zone, sandwiched between safety reports and contractor invoices. I flipped through without thinking. Then I saw them. Dozens of small betting forms, each one with a worker's name, a site number, and the word odds scrawled in ballpoint pen. At first, my brain refused to accept it. I read them over and over, looking for another explanation. Maybe they were jokes. Maybe it was dark construction humor I didn't understand. But then I saw a familiar name. A man who had died in a scaffolding collapse 2 months earlier. Next to it, a payout figure and a date. The same week he died. My stomach turned so hard I had to sit down. I covered my mouth with one hand to keep from crying out. These weren't jokes. They were actual bets on when someone would die. A pool. An office game, played with human lives. My vision blurred. My body shook. I wanted to scream, to break something, to run out and confront them all. But I didn't. I took pictures, steadying my hand against the edge of the desk. I put everything back exactly how I found it. Then I walked out to the patio, smiled, and told Sam the steak needed more salt. I don't remember the rest of that night. Just the sound of my pulse in my ears and the knowledge that I wasn't gathering evidence anymore. I was witnessing evil. The courtroom was packed. Every bench filled, reporters lined against the walls, cameras just out of frame, their lights reflecting off the polished wood like it was a stage. And in some ways, it was. Except this wasn't performance. This was reckoning. I sat behind the prosecution table, dressed in a tailored suit with my badge clipped to my belt. No one recognized me at first. Not my mother, not Sam. Not Uncle Dom, who sat at the defense table, still smug, still convinced this would all blow over. Then the prosecutor stood. The government calls Deputy U.S. Marshal Emily Russo. The room froze. My mother turned. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sam blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Uncle Dom paled as I stood and walked to the stand. My footsteps echoed like hammers. Each one is closing the distance between who I used to be and who I have become. I took the oath, Saturday down. Look straight ahead, not at them, not yet. Please state your name and position for the record, the prosecutor said. Emily Russo, Deputy U.S. Marshal, Western District of Texas, assigned to the Organized Crime Task Force. The silence that followed was louder than anything I'd heard in my life. A courtroom full of people breathing the same air, not believing what they were hearing. I continued. I have served with the Marshals for 19 years. Prior to that, I spent 3 years in undercover operations with the DEA. Behind me, someone gasped. My mother, probably. And what is your relationship to the defendants? They are my family, I said, clear and cold. Uncle, cousin, blood, not loyalty. I testified for 2 hours. Every detail, every document, every conversation is caught on tape. I walked them through the shell companies, the fake safety inspections, the money funneled to cartels. I spoke about the workers, the threats, the deaths, and finally, the betting slips. They didn't just ignore safety violations, I said. They turned them into a game. They wagered on who would die first. Human lives became entertainment. I turned then, just slightly, enough to see their faces. My mother was crying. Sam stared down at the table. Uncle Dom gritted his teeth, rage simmering behind years of fake charm. None of them spoke. When the defense attorney tried to paint me as bitter, as vengeful, I didn't flinch. Revenge would have been easier, I said. It doesn't take years of surveillance and federal approval, just a gun and a grudge. There was a pause, a shift in the room. The truth was finally louder than the lies. I looked at the jury, at the judge. The workers' families are sitting in the back rows. I didn't come here to destroy my family, I said. They did that themselves. I came to stop them from doing it to anyone else. The courtroom held its breath. For the first time in 22 years, so did I. And then I exhaled. It was done. They were waiting for me in the hallway. My mother stepped forward first, eyes red, voice trembling like the years hadn't happened. "Emily, please, we didn't know. We thought you were lost." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at her and said quietly, "You told everyone I was broken. You used my silence to make yourselves feel cleaner." Her hands reached for mine. I kept them at my sides. Uncle Dom followed, his voice lower, full of something he probably thought was remorse. "We raised you. We protected you." I shook my head. "You protected a system that killed people. You protected profit. You never once protected me." Sam tried to joke, tried to soften the moment. "We're still family, right? This can't be how it ends." I turned to him. "No, Sam. This is exactly how it ends. You made your choices. So did I." My mother started to cry harder. "But we love you. We always have." I almost believed her. But then I remembered all the years she didn't call. The years she let the lies sit heavy in the mouths of neighbors. "You loved the version of me that made you feel better," I said. "The real me? The one who couldn't look away from what you did? You never wanted to know her." I stepped back, not with anger, but with certainty. This wasn't revenge. It was released. I wasn't carrying the weight anymore. I wasn't waiting for apologies that would never come. "Goodbye," I said. Not softly, not cruelly, just finally. 6 months later, the sentences came down hard. Uncle Dom got 30 years. Sam got 15. The company was dissolved, its assets redirected into a compensation fund for the families of the victims. Each family received a settlement, legal status, and most importantly, the freedom to live without fear. Kids were enrolled in schools. Parents found new jobs with companies that valued safety over speed. On the anniversary of the arrests, I got a card. It was handmade, signed by every child whose parent had once feared deportation for speaking up. It said thank you. That was it. Just 2 words. But they landed deeper than any medal or title I'd ever earned. I keep that card in my drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. That strength isn't about how loud you are. It's about how far you're willing to go for what's right. Even if no one sees. Even if it costs everything. They used to say I was too soft, too emotional, too weak to survive in their world. And for a long time, I believed them. I let that lie shape how I saw myself. I let it silence me, shrink me, push me into corners where my worth was measured by how invisible I could be. But they were right about one thing. I wasn't strong enough for their world. Because I was strong enough for something else. For standing up when no one else would. For walking away from everything I knew to protect people they never even saw as human. Strength isn't cruelty. It isn't silence or blind loyalty. Strength is doing the right thing even when it breaks you. Especially when it breaks you. So yes, I was too soft for their world. And thank God for that. Because the world I chose needed someone exactly like me.